What's the most messed up way your parents joked with you? My mom spent my whole childhood warning me about an older brother she had kicked out of the house. I grew up terrified I'd end up just like him. Until the day I met him in the park. And the truth he told me sent chills down my spine. I'm Daniel, 15 years old, male. I don't even know how to start this because it feels like my whole life has been built on lies my mom fed me. For as long as I can remember, she's told me about Zach, my older brother who ruined everything. She said he disappointed her so badly that she kicked him out when he was still a teenager, and he'd been wandering the streets ever since. I was 6 when she first told me, and it was like she was handing me a ghost to carry on my back. There was this empty bedroom in our house, always locked except for when she wanted to make a point. She'd fling the door open and say, "This was Zach's room. See what happens when you don't listen?" The bed was stripped, but she left one old basketball trophy on the mantel like some cursed relic to remind me. Every mistake I made, bad grade, broken glass, forgotten chore, she would pause, sigh, and whisper, "Zach started like this too." I grew up terrified of becoming someone I didn't even know. My whole childhood was a performance for her approval. I studied harder, spoke softer, shrank myself smaller. Still, she'd slam cabinets and hiss that I wasn't trying hard enough. She had this way of making her voice cut straight through you, low, deliberate, dripping with disappointment. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at me with this strange, almost hungry look like she was waiting for me to fail. And the scariest part, I believed her. I believed that somewhere out there was this broken, ruined version of me named Zach who had already proven what a failure I'd be. I hated him. I hated myself for being his shadow. But the thing is, when I was 12, I met him. In real life. Hey guys, real quick before we keep going, don't forget to sub and drop a like if you're enjoying the story. And tell me what you think in the comments. I'll feature the best one in the next video. It happened on one of those dull gray afternoons when I just wanted to escape the house. I'd taken my bike to the park, trying to breathe without hearing Mom's voice in my head. I was sitting on the swings when this guy came up, maybe 18, 19. He had shaggy dark hair, tired eyes, and this awkward way of shoving his hands in his pockets like he didn't quite fit anywhere. At first I didn't think anything of it, but then he stopped, just stood there staring at me. My skin prickled. He said, almost whispering, "Daniel?" I froze. Nobody called me by my full name unless they knew me well. Most kids at school said Danny. I managed, "Yeah?" His face crumpled into this weird mix of relief and pain. "I'm Zach." I swear my whole body went cold. For years I'd pictured a monster, some ghost brother who'd failed so badly Mom erased him from our lives. And here he was. Real. Alive. Barely older than me. My voice cracked when I blurted out, "You're not dead?" He laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. More like a sound that had been trapped in his chest too long. "Dead? Is that what she told you?" I told him everything. How Mom said he disappointed her. How the empty room and the trophy were proof. How she used his name to scare me into obedience. He sat down on the swing beside me and rubbed his face like he couldn't believe it was still happening. Then he told me something that made my stomach twist. She did the same thing to me, Daniel. Only back then, it wasn't me she used. It was James. Some older brother I never met. She said James ran away after he ruined her life, and if I wasn't careful, I'd end up like him. I lived in terror of a person who didn't exist until I got old enough to push back. That's when she turned the story on me and kicked me out. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. My whole life, my fears, my nightmares, the way I shrank myself, it was all part of her sick cycle. She invented brothers like cautionary tales, like monsters under the bed, except she made sure we believed in them. I remember whispering, "So, James wasn't real?" Zach shook his head. "Never existed. Just like she told you I didn't." It was like the world shifted under me. If James wasn't real, how many of Mom's stories were lies? How much of my life had I been living in chains she built out of ghosts? And the worst part, when I looked at Zach, exhausted and half-starved, I knew she'd rather throw her own son away than admit she was the problem. After that first shock in the park, Zach and I started meeting in secret. It felt dangerous, like we were spies sharing forbidden knowledge. Every time I biked over, I'd check behind me twice, terrified Mom would be following. She hated when I was out of her sight too long, always wanted to know exactly where I was. Zach looked rough most days, torn hoodie, dirt under his nails, this haunted look that made him seem older than he was. He told me he'd been crashing on couches, sometimes sleeping in abandoned buildings. "She made sure I couldn't come back," he said once, staring at the ground. "Told the neighbors I was violent. Told the school I was a liar. Told social services I was dangerous. By the time I figured it out, no one wanted to hear my side." That hit me like a punch. I could see it happening. Mom's voice, her crocodile tears. How convincing she could be when she wanted to look like the victim. The same woman who'd whisper in my ear that Zach's fate could be mine had gone to war against him using nothing but her words. And people believed her. I told him about the room, the trophy, the way she'd pause in the middle of yelling at me and mutter, "You'll end up like Zach." Zach actually laughed when I mentioned the trophy. "That's mine. I won that in 8th grade. She probably left it there to make her little horror story look real." The more we compared stories, the more twisted it became. He told me she used to stand over him while he did homework, tapping her nails on the table until he got an answer wrong. Then she'd whisper, "James was smarter than you." When he cried, she'd tell him boys who cried always ended up leaving their mothers. James. A ghost she'd created just for him. A brother who never existed, except in her arsenal of punishments. I couldn't shake the thought. She'd done it to him, now she was doing it to me. What if she already had a plan for the day I started resisting her? What story was she building behind my back? That night back at home, I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling while Mom moved around the house, humming this eerie, tuneless sound. Every creak of the floorboards made my chest tighten. I kept thinking, how many of her smiles were lies? How many of her warnings were traps? Meeting Zach had cracked something open inside me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just scared of disappointing her. I was scared of her. After a few weeks of sneaking around to see Zach, I started slipping at home. Mom noticed immediately. She always did. She had this predator's instinct, like she could smell secrets on me. One evening at dinner, she set down her fork and stared at me. "You've been different lately, distracted, nervous." Her voice was soft, but her eyes were sharp. "Are you hiding something from me, Daniel?" My throat went dry. I shook my head too quickly, muttered something about being tired from school. She leaned across the table, brushing my cheek with her hand in this mock affectionate way that made my stomach twist. "You know what happens when children lie. Zach lied too. Look where he ended up." It was like she was daring me to flinch. That night I broke. I told Zach I couldn't keep the secret much longer. She was watching me too closely. He put his hand on my shoulder, surprisingly firm. "You're not crazy, Daniel. I lived it too. If she's tightening her grip, it means she knows she's losing it." But fear makes you clumsy. At school, my math teacher pulled me aside after class. She said I'd been jumpy, withdrawn, scribbling strange things in the margins of my homework. Things like, James wasn't real and Zach is alive. I didn't even remember writing them. She asked gently, "Who's James?" And before I could stop myself, it all came spilling out. Not everything, just enough. That Mom used stories about lost brothers to scare us. That I'd found out Zach was real. That I was terrified she'd do to me what she did to him. The teacher's face went pale. She didn't lecture me, didn't brush it off. Instead, she said, "I think I need to call someone who can help you." That's how the social worker came in. A woman named Carla. She had kind eyes but a no-nonsense tone, the kind that made you feel both safe and exposed at the same time. She asked me to talk about Zach, about James, about the locked room and the trophy. I hesitated, terrified Mom would find out, but Carla promised, "You're not in trouble. None of this is your fault." For the first time, I said it all out loud. Every manipulation, every whispered warning, the ghost she planted in our heads. What I didn't know then was that Carla would track Zach down too. And that was when Mom's carefully built world would start to crack. When Carla, the social worker, tracked Zach down, it was like striking a match in a gas-filled room. Suddenly, it wasn't just me whispering about ghosts. There was living, breathing proof. She set up a meeting at the school with Zach, me, Carla, and the school psychologist, Mr. Green. My hands shook the whole time. I kept expecting Mom to barge through the door, screeching about betrayal, but instead Zach walked in, looking nervous but determined, and sat right beside me. Carla started gently. "Daniel has been telling us some troubling things about how his mother has spoken to him. Zach, we need you to share what happened when you were living with her." Zach's jaw clenched. His voice shook at first, but once he got going, it all poured out. How she'd invented James to control him. How she twisted every mistake into a prophecy of abandonment. How when he resisted, she fabricated stories for social services, painting him as violent, unstable, until he was forced out. Hearing it out loud with adults taking notes was surreal. Every word he said matched the shadows I had grown up with. The room was silent except for his voice and the scratching of pens on paper. When he finished, Carla looked me straight in the eye and said, "Daniel, do you see now? This isn't about you failing her. This is a pattern. She's been doing this for years." That was the first time I felt something stronger than fear. Anger. White-hot, shaking anger. We left the school together, and that's when it all blew up. Mom was waiting outside in the parking lot. She must have caught wind of the meeting. She stormed across the asphalt, screaming, "How dare you poison my sons against me?" Her voice echoed, people staring, kids whispering. Then she saw Zach. Her face twisted into something I'll never forget. She spat his name like it was venom. "You." Zach didn't back down. He just said, calm but loud enough for everyone, "James never existed, and neither did the lies you told about me." Mom lost it. She started crying, no, wailing, grabbing at her hair, shouting that we were ungrateful, that we were destroying her life. At one point she slammed her fist against a car hood so hard the alarm went off, drawing even more attention. Teachers rushed out. Someone called the police. I stood frozen, my body buzzing like I'd been struck by lightning. All those years she'd controlled me with whispers and locked doors. Now she was unraveling in public, right where everyone could see, and for the first time I realized she couldn't control the story anymore. After the parking lot meltdown, things moved fast. The school filed an incident report. Carla came to our house with another caseworker to assess the environment. That's what they called it. Assess. But really, it was them quietly noting every strange thing in the house that lined up with what Zach and I had said. The first place I led them was the locked room. Mom never let me in there without her, but I knew the key was taped under the kitchen drawer. When we opened the door, it was exactly how Zach described it. Stripped bed, bare dresser, and that one lonely basketball trophy on the mantel. Carla asked me, "Did your mother ever explain why this room is kept like this?" I swallowed hard. She said it was proof of Zach's failure, that if I disappointed her, I'd end up just like him. Zach, standing right behind us, whispered, "That's my old room. She left it like a crime scene just to scare him." It wasn't just the room. Carla found photo albums with pictures ripped out, school certificates that had the names scratched over. She took notes on everything. It felt like watching the walls of her control crack open piece by piece. When Mom came home and saw Carla there, she lost her mind. She started shrieking about invasions of privacy, grabbing papers off the table and tearing them up. At one point, she even yanked the trophy off the mantel and hurled it against the wall, shattering it. "There, happy now? Your precious evidence is gone!" she screamed. But Carla didn't flinch. She just calmly said, "That's all noted as well." The house turned into a battlefield over the next week. Mom started hovering in my doorway at night, muttering under her breath about betrayal. She unplugged the landline and accused me of sneaking calls. She even stormed into my backpack, ripping out notebooks, looking for lies I was feeding the school. Zach stayed close, even though it made things dangerous. One night, when she caught him sneaking food from the fridge, she shoved him hard against the counter, screaming that he was a parasite. I jumped between them before she could hit him, my heart pounding so loud I thought I'd pass out. That was the moment I realized I wasn't scared of being like Zach anymore. I was scared of what she'd do if nobody stopped her. The next morning, Carla called and told us they were preparing a court petition. It wasn't just assessing anymore, it was intervention. And Mom knew it, which made her more dangerous than ever. The petition went through faster than I expected. Suddenly, there were court dates on the calendar, stacks of paperwork, and a guardian ad litem assigned to me. Basically a lawyer whose only job was to represent my interests. It felt surreal, like my whole life had gone from whispers in the dark to fluorescent-lit offices and official reports. Zach was terrified at first. He thought Mom's lies would win again, like when she got him kicked out. But this time was different. We weren't kids alone anymore. We had Carla, Mr. Green, the teachers who'd witnessed her meltdown in the parking lot. There were police reports. Even neighbors came forward, quietly telling investigators about the screaming they'd heard through the walls, how Mom spread stories about her dangerous son no one ever saw. Court was hell, though. I'll never forget the first hearing. Mom showed up in this neat floral dress, clutching tissues like she was the picture of heartbreak. The second she started talking, she cried. Loud, dramatic sobs. She told the judge her boys had been brainwashed against her, that Zach was violent and I was falling under his corrupting influence. Hearing her twist it all in that calm, rehearsed voice made me sick. She even looked over at me at one point, tears streaking her face, and mouthed, "Please, Daniel, tell them the truth." The truth. Zach lost it. He stood up and shouted, "You don't get to use him like you used me." Bailiffs had to calm him down. I thought the judge would be furious, but instead she just watched us both closely. Then came the evidence. Carla presented her notes, the teacher testified, and the school even brought in the ripped-up homework where I'd scribbled about James and Zach. And then they played the recording. I hadn't even known Carla was recording that day in the kitchen when Mom smashed the trophy and screamed about evidence. The courtroom went silent, hearing her voice echo through the speakers, shrill and frantic, while Zach whispered in the background, "That's my trophy." For once, her performance didn't land. The mask slipped in front of people who mattered. By the end of the session, the judge ordered temporary protection. Mom wasn't allowed unsupervised contact with me. I'd stay with a foster family connected to the school for now, and Zach was directed to a transitional housing program with support services. When they escorted us out, Mom lunged toward me, sobbing, "They're stealing you from me!" Security held her back as her screams echoed down the marble hallway. I should have been terrified, but for the first time in my life I felt something else. Relief. The final hearings dragged on for months. Each session felt like a tug of war with my childhood as the rope. Mom clung to her lies, spinning new ones every time the old ones unraveled. She swore neighbors were conspiring against her, claimed Zach had brainwashed me with drugs. At one point, she even pulled out fake letters, supposedly from James, insisting he was real and had run away. The judge wasn't buying it. Every lie she told just added weight to the stack of evidence against her. By then, Carla had compiled years of records, the empty room, the missing photos, the trophy, the recordings, even old school files from Zach's time that showed the same pattern. Layer after layer of ghosts she'd invented to control us. When the ruling finally came, it felt like the air shifted. The court stripped Mom of custody. She was ordered into psychiatric treatment and barred from contacting me without strict supervision. The judge's words still ring in my head. These children deserve truth, stability, and safety. What they have endured is a prolonged pattern of manipulation and psychological abuse. I wasn't sent back to her house. Instead, I stayed with the foster family who actually listened when I spoke, who asked about my day without turning it into ammunition. Zach got into a transitional program that helped him find steady work and a safe place to live. For the first time, neither of us woke up to the sound of her voice reminding us of who we'd become. The strangest part was the quiet. No more footsteps pacing the hallway at night. No more whispers about James. No more locked doors. Just silence. At first it felt wrong, like waiting for the storm to return. But over time, that silence became the sound of freedom. Zach and I started rebuilding, not just with each other, but with ourselves. We compared scars, literal and invisible. We laughed sometimes about the absurdity of it all. "Remember how she said James loved spinach?" Zach would joke, and I'd snort because I'd choked down spinach for years thinking it was some cursed test. We'll never get back the childhood she stole from us. But we got something else. Something she never wanted us to have. The truth. Each other. And the knowledge that ghosts only have power if you believe in them. The room in her house is still empty, the walls probably still carrying her whispers, but in my head it isn't a warning anymore. It's a monument to everything Zach and I survived. And that survival? That's ours, not hers. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and like it. You can also watch more shocking stories in the playlist.